President Trump shakes things up at the United Nations off teleprompter. U.S. Secret Service thwarts a major electronic terrorist attack in New York City just before Trump arrives at the UN. And Kamala Harris' big book tour is going poorly. I'm Tony Kinnett, host of the Daily Signal's Tony Kinnett Cast, syndicated nationally at 7 p.m. Eastern. It is Wednesday, September 24th, 2025. This is the Daily Signal's top news in 10. Well, yesterday, before President Trump arrived in New York City to speak at the United Nations General Assembly, the Secret Service of the United States announced a major electronic terrorist attack that was thwarted by its agents along with several others in the Department of Homeland Security and the Department of Justice. Here's Agent McCool, yeah, that's his real name, with the overview.
Hello, my name is Matt McCool, and I'm the Special Agent in charge of the Secret Service New York Field Office. We are making this announcement as a matter of public interest given timing, amount, and concentration of material recovered during a recent Secret Service Protective Intelligence investigation. Following multiple telecommunications-related imminent threats directed towards senior U.S. government officials this spring, the U.S. Secret Service began a protective intelligence investigation to determine the extent and impact these threats could have on protective operations. This was a difficult and complex effort to identify the source of these fraudulent calls and the impact on the Secret Service protective mission. During this period, we leveraged technical assistance and support of federal partners, including Homeland Security Investigations, the Department of Justice, and the Office of the Director of National Intelligence. We also received phenomenal support from our state and local law enforcement partners, to include the NYPD. The investigation led us to the New York tri-state area, where investigators discovered tens of thousands of co-located and networked cellular devices capable of carrying out nefarious telecommunications attacks. These devices allowed anonymous encrypted communications between potential threat actors and criminal enterprises, enabling criminal organizations to operate undetected. This network had the potential to disable cell phone towers and essentially shut down the cellular network in New York City.
At the United Nations itself, President Trump's visit took a bit of an interesting turn security-wise when, as soon as he and First Lady Melania Trump stepped on one of the escalators heading towards the General Chambers, the escalator suddenly stopped moving. And then to add insult to injury, as the president stepped up to speak before the United Nations Assembly, suddenly the teleprompter flickered off just as he was getting ready to speak.
Very much appreciated. And I don't mind making this speech without a teleprompter, because the teleprompter is not working. I feel very happy to be up here with you nevertheless, and that way you speak more from the heart. I can only say that whoever's operating this teleprompter is in big trouble.
The president expressed his admiration and thanks to the United Nations for giving him two things that over the last couple of months may seem paltry, but are nevertheless important.
I ended 7 wars, dealt with the leaders of each and every one of these countries, and never even received a phone call from the United Nations offering to help in finalizing the deal. All I got from the United Nations was an escalator that on the way up stopped right in the middle. If the First Lady wasn't in great shape, she would have fallen, but she's in great shape. We're both in good shape. We both stood.
In the content of the president's address, he criticized the mass migration crisis into Europe, which is resulting in a lot of community strife, as well as the taxing of resources and security.
So changed. Now they want to go to Sharia law, but you're in a different country. You can't do that. Both the immigration and their suicidal energy ideas will be the death of Western Europe if something is not done immediately. This cannot be sustained. What makes the world so beautiful is that each country is unique. But to stay this way, every sovereign nation must have the right to control their own borders. You have the right to control your borders, as we do now, and to limit the sheer numbers of migrants entering their countries and paid for by the people of that nation that were there and that built that particular nation at the time. They put their blood, sweat, tears, money into that country, and now they're being ruined. Proud nations must be allowed to protect their communities and prevent their societies from being overwhelmed by people they have never seen before, with different customs, religions, with different everything.
He then juxtaposed this to the European view on climate change.
And they're heading down a path of total destruction. You know, the carbon footprint was a big, big thing a few years ago. I remember hearing about the carbon footprint, and then President Obama would get into Air Force One, a massive Boeing 747, and not a new one, an old one with old engines that spew everything into the atmosphere. He'd talk about the carbon footprint, we must do so. Then he'd get in and he'd fly from Washington to Hawaii to play a round of golf. And then he'd get back onto that big, beautiful plane and he'd fly back and he'd talk about, again, global warming and the carbon footprint. It's a con job.
President Trump also promised to continue the destruction of narco-terrorist boats off the coast of Venezuela or wherever they may be from, as long as they are headed towards the United States.
And we've virtually stopped drugs coming into our country by sea. We call them the water drugs. They kill hundreds of thousands of people. I've also designated multiple savage drug cartels as far as foreign terrorist organizations, along with two bloodthirsty transnational gangs, probably the worst gangs anywhere in the world, MS-13 and Tren de Aragua. Tren de Aragua is from Venezuela, by the way. Such organizations torture, maim, mutilate, and murder with impunity. They're the enemies of all humanity. And for this reason, we've recently begun using the supreme power of the United States military to destroy Venezuelan terrorists and trafficking networks led by Nicolas Maduro. To every terrorist thug smuggling poisonous drugs into the United States of America, please be warned that we will blow you out of existence. That's what we're doing. We have no choice.
Over on Rachel Maddow's show, Kamala Harris articulated that, yeah, sure, in the book 107 Days, she may have said she didn't choose former Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg because he was gay, but what she actually meant was she didn't choose Pete Buttigieg because he was gay.
If his reaction to that, since this part of the book has come out, if you've had any reflection on that, or I guess I'd ask you to just elaborate on that a little bit. It's hard to hear.
Yeah.
With you running as, you're the first woman elected vice president. You're a black woman and a South Asian woman elected to that high office, very nearly elected president. To say that he couldn't be on the ticket effectively because he was gay is hard to hear.
No. That's not what I said. That he couldn't be on the ticket because he is gay. My point, as I write in the book, is that I was clear that in 107 days, in one of the most hotly contested elections for President of the United States, against someone like Donald Trump, who knows no floor, to be a black woman running for President of the United States and as a vice presidential running mate, a gay man, with the stakes being so high, it made me very sad, but I also realized it would be a real risk. No matter how, I've been an advocate and an ally of the LGBT community my entire life. So it wasn't about, yeah, right. So it wasn't about any prejudice on my part, but
that
we had such a short period of time, and the stakes were so high. I think Pete is a phenomenal public servant. And I think America is and would be ready for that. But when I had to make that decision with 2 weeks to go, you know, and maybe I was being too cautious. You know, I'll let our friends, we should all talk about that. Maybe I was. But that's the decision I made, and I, as with everything else in the book, I'm being very candid about that.
Yeah.
Now, whether or not you're too gay for Kamala Harris to choose as her next vice presidential candidate, you can head down to the description and make sure you're subscribed to the Tony Kinnett Cast. And join us tonight at 7 p.m. Eastern for a roundup of the day's news and nonsense. I'm Tony Kinnett, and this has been the Daily Signal's Top News in 10. Take care.